Then we should all look at the cameras and smile.
Tomorrow, the government's domestic, non-Brexit agenda will get a rare airing. Justine Greening, the Education Secretary, will set out her thoughts on what comes next for English education. The English Schools Reports Card, though, isn't in great shape. Let's start off with sociology. This graph shows average GCSE results. It starts at the left, where we have the results for children in the poorest neighbourhoods, moving to the right, where we have the richest. The height of the line shows how well pupils from that background did, on average, in English, maths and their 3 best other GCSEs. What it shows is that the poorest children at the left averaged around a D, and the very richest averaged around a B. That's a 2-grade gap. Closing that gap has been a focus of policy for years, but this government wants more worrying about what they call ordinary working families, that is to say, not the poorest.
You might think that by investing and targeting on particular pupils like poor children as we do at the EEF, that would have a negative impact on others. But that's not what we've seen from our research. We know that what works best is improving whole class teaching, and that benefits everybody in the school and the class. We've seen that from our work, and if you look at those schools who have the best attainment results, they're doing well for the poor children, the rich children, and those in the middle.
Let's get started.
In truth, we've also not been that radical on helping poorer children. This is footage of the process by which children get places at some overpopular US charter schools. It's quite hard to watch.
20.
Still, it's even harder for wealthier people to game their way in.
2026 accepted.
England has another huge problem: geography. Going to school in London, in particular, is very different to going to school elsewhere. When you think of Westminster, you probably think of things like this. But behind all the pomp and the circumstance and the politicians here, there's actually an urban borough with really serious social problems. Happily, Westminster has really good schools that do a great service by its poorest children, such as those eligible for free school meals. You can see that if we go back to that measure of GCSE performance across 5 subjects that we used earlier. Poor Westminster kids beat poor Isle of Wight kids by an average of 2 grades in every subject. They get B's and C's here, not D's and E's. In fact, poor kids in Westminster beat the national average for England for all children. Geography is hard. It's much more difficult to get teachers to move to the Isle of Wight than London. Academy chains also struggle in places where local authorities struggled before them. We also know that areas with grammar schools, another government idea, don't do any better than other places. Westminster's poor children actually get higher grades than selective Kent's non-poor pupils. The school system also has a very basic economics problem. In short, it's running out of money.
There are 2 major issues affecting school funding in England at the moment. Firstly, schools are partway through making their first real terms cuts to spending per pupil since the mid-1990s. Between 2015 and 2020, school spending per pupil in England will fall by about 8% in real terms. At the same time, the government is proposing a major shake-up of the school funding system, the introduction of a national funding formula that will for the first time ensure that similar schools are funded in a similar way. Of course, there are winners and there are losers, but in this case, the losers are effectively losing twice. Firstly from the national average cuts, and secondly from any losses that result from the introduction of a national funding formula.
The government has coped just about thus far with a baby boom, but that wave is about to hit secondaries, so keep an eye on it. There's also a teacher supply shortage, so all in all, keeping the show on the road is going to be very hard.